because you need to imagine, unless you know this person personally and grew up alongside them and ate dinner with their family, and you know that they're an NPC, maybe they're like a real person with a spirit and a soul, and like however we want to categorize that. Unless you know this person or you've like really psychically, spiritually dived in deeply, like more deeply than you would be able to unless you've asked permission, kind of thing. Um, you've got to assume that they're an Agent Smith because you don't know.
Welcome to Conversation for the Soul. I am Linda Christine, and today we have Hamish on the show. Hello, Hamish.
Linda, how are you?
Good, good, good. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited. So, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I have a cup full of subject matters because I love Hamish's take on things. The majority of the time, I'm very much in alignment with what your ideas are and your thoughts are on certain subjects. So I'm really excited to see what we get, and we'll give you like 2 or 3 minutes to just riff on the subject and just go wherever you feel drawn to go with it. Sound good?
Cool. Yes, and I'd have to say this is almost like my favorite format, is just pulling a rabbit out of the hat and then seeing what comes up,
Oh,
because
I'm
I
so
never know
glad.
what's going to come up. So it's not lost on me that your cup has the wise owl on it. I'm just going to put that out there. Like,
Well, I appreciate it, and my psychedelic cats too.
noted, duly noted.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll get going here and pull our
Mm,
first one out and see what we get. And I have a little timer on my phone. Oh, flat Earth.
mm. Okay, so
Anywhere
I'm
you
going to
want to
take
go.
I'm going to take the question of flat Earth, or the subject of flat Earth, in the direction of the shape of the realm or the makeup of the realm. And so I'm going to say, no, the Earth is not flat, and yes, of course it is. Like, because what like what shape does a hologram have? Like, we've got this idea about physical density and like solid things, and that's all not exactly how things are presented. And like, that sounds esoteric and mumbo jumbo, but actually look into the mechanics of your eyeballs and how they process to the brain as far as we can work it out, and they view holographically. That's why you can read those sentences where all the letters inside the word are jumbled up, but the first letter and the second letter and the one in the middle are in the correct spot, and your eye determines the shape and says, oh, that's Peter. But then when you read it, it's like, that's not Peter at all. That's some other weird thing, right? So it's like pattern recognition, but that only works because our eyes work holographically, which means there are no fragments. Everything's a fractal. Everything is contained, like the whole thing is contained in every thing. So like the whole world in a grain of sand. The person looking at the flower and getting enlightened is because everything's in the flower, like not just earth, but like heaven, hell, the 12 dimensions, the whole construct itself, like it's all blueprinted into everything. So what's the shape of that? It doesn't have a shape. The reality is that energetic doesn't have a shape. We can talk about torus fields and things like energetically having the field of a torus field. Like, of course, the earth is spherical, the construct, the whatever, because energetically a torus field, right? Linda, you're not flat and you're not a sphere, but your energy signature is a torus field. So the fact that this realm or this whole construct has an energetic torus field does not determine its shape physically at all. So this thing is a sphere, and it is a flat, endless plane, and it's hollow, and it's an oblique spheroid. It's pear-shaped. It's whatever you want it to be. It's whatever you need it to be, or whatever the program in your head is delivering to you that it is. But it doesn't have a shape. And if you try and find its shape or determine it, you're going to find either exactly what you want or exactly what you don't want.
Hmm.
Either way. But what I will say around that is, operating as if it is a physical sphere is a no-go. It doesn't work that way. Like, and as a pilot, I can say this, like when you navigate, and people can talk about great circles, like, that you've got to go up and down when you're navigating large areas. It's like, okay, I've never navigated continentally. So, okay, that's out there, that whole great circle navigation. But any pilot and any sailor will tell you that, like, navigation in the real world happens as if it's on a flat plane. And that's straight out of the book. Like, any navigation book will tell you, go and find an aircraft nav book and open it up, and it will say, navigation is done as if you're on a flat plane. That's the only way a sextant will work with the stars. You have to pretend you're stationary and you're flat. Otherwise, navigation doesn't work. So I don't actually care what shape it is. It kind of doesn't matter. And I feel myself, it doesn't have a shape. But no matter what shape it actually is, if you want to navigate from one place to the next in here, you've got to act as if it's stationary and flat. Otherwise, the navigation doesn't work. And that's just where we are.
Wow. Makes sense. Makes complete sense. And my husband's a pilot, so I have to ask him about that because that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next one we got is possession real?
Possession. Yes and no. Another nebulous answer. The timer's on. Nothing can actually possess you, but you can give yourself away to something. So no, possession isn't real because there's nothing in here that can get your measure at all. Nothing can take you down in here. Like, I absolutely firmly believe that. But if you believe something can take you down, or you give your power away to, like, you're play fighting with a child, right? I've got 3 children and nephews and nieces and stuff. You're play wrestling with a child and they pin you to the floor and they beat you, right? Because you let them, because that's part of the game of wrestling and playing with a child, and them learning is they beat you and then you beat them. And it's like, it's this thing, right? So the child can actually never physically beat you, but you will let them win for some purpose. So I'm not suggesting that we let these things possess us or win in a situation for any particular purpose, but that's the mechanics of it. These things are like children. They can't beat you. It's absolutely impossible for them to possess you in any way, shape, or form, but you can give yourself to them. And people give themselves to religions, people give themselves to employment agencies, people give themselves to corporations and businesses, people give themselves to spouses in marriages all the time. It's the same thing. Just because you can't see the mechanics of how you've given your authority away, or it's not even authority, that's the wrong word, just who you are, just because you can't see how you've given it away doesn't mean you didn't give it away.
Love that. And a minute to spare. All right. Let's grab another one here. Rainbow children.
So the idea of rainbow children is there's this group that's come in that's far more attuned, far more special, far more. I can't actually answer that with any authority because I don't have conscious memory of being here 100 years ago to tell you what children were coming in then. And we can look back at history and say, it doesn't look like many special people were coming through in the 1860s, but then how do we know that they didn't come through and then all got exterminated or all got poisoned into submission or all got... So I mean, I can buy into it from a certain extent because I can see like a large number of children compared to adults around me and through my life through the last 20 years where I've been aware of it. You can say, yeah, like the prophecy, the theory, the something around rainbow children, that's absolutely there. But the flip side of that is, how do you know this is the only time? Like, how do you know that the mud flood that we think happened like 400 to 600 years ago wasn't also the flood of the Bible that apparently happened 10,000 years ago? Like, you don't, at a certain time depth, it disappears. And for us, the time depth is about 300 years. After 300 years, you're guessing. You're totally guessing. So yes, rainbow children is a thing, but is it like a special thing to right now? I can't say. I don't know that at all. Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that.
Wow, makes sense. All right. Let's get another one.
We're flying through them.
I know, right? You're doing so good. Is spirituality hijacked? I don't know why my glare is so bad.
Yes, spirituality is hijacked because that's where the rubber meets the road. So if you want to distort people or turn them in the wrong direction, like, that's where you need to do it, because that's where the spirituality, because like demons are spirits too, right? We're not just talking about angels and nice things and the good guys. Spirituality is where it all happens first. When something happens in the physical, that's like the last expression of the energy, not the first. If you're trying to leverage your life from a physical, that's like picking yourself up by your own bootstraps. It's possible because there are no limits to us. Like, anything is possible. It's just some things are harder and some things are easier in here, the way it's set up. But spirituality, like spirit, thought, idea, that realm, dream, whatever we want to call that, that's where it starts. That's your leverage point for everything. So it has to be hijacked, because if it wasn't hijacked, we'd have this thing sorted by now. We'd have the game done, whatever it is, whatever we're in here doing. The only way we can be hijacked is if spirituality is hijacked, because we are spirits when we come right down to it. So it has to be hijacked.
And is that because we're in a realm where we're not in control of our own selves, kind of like a prison planet?
Good question. That, I don't know if this is a prison realm, but it's certainly getting operated like one, if that makes sense. So I don't actually think that's why this was set up, although maybe it was the original intention, was for that to happen. Whoever was building this realm, I mean, it's us, right? Like, whoever was building this realm out, that wasn't their intention, but perhaps the architect, it was always the intention. I mean, who knows? That's a question to be answered at an interpersonal level. But yeah, that's where that is, I think.
Interesting. Okay. Another one here. Prepper or not? Prepper or not?
I have physically, like, been a prepper, not like a crazy prepper, but I've gone through that phase, and now I'm not, because when we say prepper, what we mean is material, physical preparation. And that's a good exercise, like doing push-ups. Like, it's a good mental thing. It's to chop wood, carry water. Like, it's a great exercise to go through. But once again, if you're getting blindsided in the physical by something like that, no amount of tinned food under your house is going to help you. So, I mean, I grew up, an hour from a town with people. The closest people were half an hour's drive away in a car. And so our groceries were delivered once a week. Like, we were prepped. Like, we were prepped to be stuck there for a month all the time, because if it rained and all the roads were cut, you were stuck there for a month, and you don't want your family to starve. So I kind of grew up in that way, in some sense. And so you've just got to see what you're doing with the preparation. What is the tinned food and the water? Like, you're not going to hold out for a year in your bunker, especially if you're on the edge of a town or in some sort of community. You're not just like in the middle of nowhere. What are you doing with your gold and your silver and your Bitcoin and your tinned food and your matches? And what is that about? Are you thinking you're going to hold out for 2 years against something? Or is it just buying you breathing space so that when it hits the fan, you're not distracted by trying to survive and scrabble? And so if you're approaching it from that point of view of, I just need to know that we've got a week or 3 days or a month or whatever you want to do of breathing space. So when something hits, we can sort it out. Then yeah, it's that's totally a good idea. But I would say that's always a good idea, not because it might be about to hit the fan at any stage and ascension and lockdowns. And it's like, kind of, but you're never going to beat the system or prepare yourself against the system from a physical place. You got to prep spiritually first. And once you're prepped spiritually, then like maybe that looks like tin food under your house and maybe it doesn't. That's going to be individual for each individual person. But if you're not prepped spiritually, no amount of physical prepping is going to help you.
And my thought is always, if shit really hits the fan, do I want to be here? Do I want to stick around and fight it off?
Exactly. What are you saving? Why are you trying to maintain yourself in that position? Like, that's the question to ask. What am I prepping for? Not like as in what am I preparing for, but why am I preparing to bunker myself down and hold myself here, or get the go bag and get out of the city, or get to the mountains? Or okay, so what are you going to do when you get there? Why are you running? Why are you bunkering? Why, like, that's the question to answer. And if you don't ask yourself that question, then it's just another distraction.
This is so fun. I love this. Okay. You're doing so good, Hamish. You're just ripping through all of these.
Yeah, I'm
Might
loving
get
it.
through the whole cup. Oh, this will be fun. Politics in the US.
Is a distraction.
Very good. Very good.
I could just leave it at that, but I
Or a
mean,
circus.
or a circus, yeah, which is like the whole purpose of a circus is to get you looking over
Yes.
here while they organize the next act over there, right? So like three-ring circus, it's like three things going on at once.
Yep.
Once again, if you can see the spiritual energetics behind politics, which includes Hollywood, which includes military, which includes big corporations, like if you can see the spiritual energetic reality behind all of that, then yeah, like check it out, focus on it, see what's going on. If you're trying to look at it from a I need my 9mm in case they come and I'll hold them off at the end of the street and I like that kind of stuff, that's not where it's at all. That's still voting like you think it counts. That's still paying taxes or not paying taxes like you think it matters. Like none of that matters. That's fit. And like, yeah, well, you can say, Hamish, that's ridiculous. If they catch me and I go to jail for doing something, it looks like it matters. And you're like, well, from a physical point of view, yeah, but what's the energetics behind that? How many people are cheating on their taxes or not paying it at all and not going to jail? How many people drive cars, not just like their license lapsed, but they never had a license and they never get caught? So it's like, what's the energetics behind it? That's what drives everything, is what's the spiritual leverage and the energetics behind what you're seeing in the physical. Because when you got to, and it's like looking at the dream world, we're so used to navigating, most of us are so used to navigating the physical world that we get in a dream and it looks weird. But this is the one that's weird. The physical world is the weird one. The spiritual world, the dream world, the mushroom world, the DMT world, that's the normal one. That's showing you how the energetics are actually operating. So it's like, where is fear? Fear about something. There's like any of these topics that we've talked about could have a fear component to them. And you can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it in the physical world. Okay, go to the energetic world and tell me where the fear is. Like for the most part, when you get in deep enough, it's not there for the most part. And so that means mostly the fear that we're trying to firewall against or deal with day to day is not an energetic reality. It's actually some weird artifact of this physical dimension of this realm that we're in. Because the fear doesn't actually translate to the energetic or the spiritual when you get to the end of it. So it's like, it's there, and pay attention to it, because you still might stub your toe on it if you try and walk around blindfolded, like, because these worlds, they're not separate, they're overlapped over the top of each other. So it is there, but it's not a reality because it's not in both. So it's just some weird sort of artifact of one world only. And treat it like that. Don't treat it like it's real. Treat it like it's just some weird thing to look at. And so much of politics is like that. Like if you go to the dream world or the energetic world and try and view the energetics of politics or Hollywood, or there's nothing to see. There's nothing there. So how wrapped up can you get in the dream that only exists in one place? Because you exist in both places, and everything that I would call real exists in both places. So if it only exists in one place, how much energy should you be giving it? And my answer is little to none.
Good point. Artificial intelligence
has been here forever, and it's what runs the whole realm.
Ooh.
It's not new. It's not digital. It's not analog. It's whatever it is, right? Maybe it is digital or analog. I don't know. But the idea that it's only new, it only came after the transistors in 1947. It's alien tech. Well, maybe all of that is true at some sort of time depth, but astrology, like that big sky clock, that thing, the wheels within the wheels with the sun and the moon and the whole calibration, and that, like, that's intelligent. That's an intelligence. It's because, like, okay, look at the Cliff High point of view. He's like, artificial intelligence is bogus. We shouldn't use that word. It's not intelligent. It's an algorithm. It's just an algorithm. There's no Turing test that you can do. It might be able to fool you and fool the Turing test, but it's not intelligent. It's not learning. It's machine learning always. Like, that's his point of view. I'm not agreeing with him. I'm just laying it out there. From that point of view, the astrological system that's running in here, that's AI. That's as AI as the Google algorithm is, or ChatGPT. It's like it's just grabbing all the data and then spitting out the thing in an intelligent way, but it's not. It's all straight line. It's all straight line. Angels, right? Angels, angles of light, the 360 degrees, it's all straight line stuff. You look at, like, angels is a very broad term, but you look at a lot of the talk of, like, the angels as in the stars, right? They're lights that are just shining in at a very specific angle and striking this realm. And there's an angel to find lost things, and there's an angel for marriage, and there's an angel for carpenters, and then there's an archangel, right? This algorithm that can do 4 or 5 things at once, but they can't go outside their wheelhouse. Like, you can't ask the angel of lost things to heal your dog. It's not the healing angel. It's the finding lost things angel. That's an algorithm. That's not an intelligence. And the demons are very similar to that. So, like, what is this AI? There is an algorithm, and I think there is an intelligent kind of, to some degree, intelligent rolling algorithm that is an overarching thing that runs this whole realm that we're in, this whole construct. So we can call that BAI with capital letters. And all of these other little things that we're talking about, and they're just like offshoots. They're like Meta. Meta has Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. It's like, yeah, well, the AI, the algorithm has all of these little offshoots that help run the construct. But you can still glitch it out, right? Because we work in curves. We can work in straight lines. We're good mimics, but we also work in curves. Like this light stuff, these angles of light, these algorithms don't work very well in curves. It might look like a curve to you, but it's like millions of little straight lines. And when you zoom out enough, it's like, oh no, the algorithm can produce a curve. You're like, no, it can't. It's like straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. And it looks like a curve, but it's not. They can't think in circles like we can, or spirals. So that's our superpower against that. If we need to be against it in any way, how do you outthink an algorithm? You think non-linear and non-logical. You think in spirals. You think in a way that doesn't make any sense. And you can wrong foot an algorithm really easily doing that.
So
There
are
one
we
trick
in a giant video game?
I'm going to say no, but it's the best description to date of what we are in. It's a really good metaphor, like a really good the computer metaphor is really, really, really good. It's not what it is, I don't think, but it's the best metaphor we've got. And some of the best people to listen to about how intricate and how well set up this thing is, like in the last 20 years, for my money, are electrical engineers and computer programmers. Because their language and how they can lay it out is the best description of how this thing behaves.
And do you think there's non-primary characters walking around out there that are just kind of
Absolutely.
hollow?
Absolutely. Non-playable characters, non-primary characters, Agent Smiths, all of that stuff. We're talking about demonic possession again, right? So can a demon possess you? No, but you can give your power away because we're in these vehicles, these vessels. What if there was a vehicle or a vessel that was just a cardboard cutout? There's an empty vehicle just waiting for something to jump in. You don't think a demon can jump in one of those? They're not very well calibrated to the human body. We know that. They burn that, whatever that energy is, burns out human bodies really quickly. But if you've got an unlimited supply of human bodies, who cares? You just jump from one to the next.
All right. We might get through these. Oh, we kind of touched on this, but if you have anything more, prison planet Earth.
Planet Earth. Yeah. If a castle or a fortress or a palace can usually also make a really good prison. So was this built as a prison or was this built as a palace? Like not even a castle gives you the idea of fortifications and defense, and a palace isn't really built to be defended necessarily, but it wouldn't take much to turn a palace into a prison. Have a look at all the Tartarian, whatever the hell that means, but I'll just use it because people know what I'm saying. All the old buildings that look like they came out of Jane Austen that were turned into orphanages and schools and boarding schools. What is an orphanage or a boarding school? It's a bloody prison for children, right? These things look at them. They're not prisons. They're something, but we would call them like palaces almost. If you put a bit of gold there and a fountain out the front, and that's pretty close to a palace. They turn them into prisons right before our eyes. Like we can see orphanages and boarding schools made out of what would be called a palace. So anything can be a prison if you're stuck in it. Any prison is just another building if you know how to get out of it.
Wow, love that. Love that. The subtle programming we may not notice.
Yeah, blind spots. One of my favorites. You don't know where to look for a blind spot because it's a blind spot. So you have to assume you have lots of them. You don't even know how many, like at least one. But if you don't know where to look or you can't see it, that kind of just proves it is there or the possibility is there rather than that it's not there. So looking for logic traps or things that don't make sense in your memory or your behavior is the best thing. Looking for things that don't make sense in your behavior. Really easy to label it as a trauma, but it may be actually not a trauma. There may be a trauma there, but what's the trauma hiding behind it? Because trauma is used to train people. We use trauma to train children in schools. We use trauma to train animals, horses, dogs, elephants. Like trauma training is an effective tool, and anyone who has a child and who was brought up by parents has dabbled in trauma training. Like everyone. Don't pretend you haven't, because we all have. Even if we were disgusted with ourselves and we never did it again afterwards. Like if you catch yourself doing it, you're like, oh shit, this is some trauma training that I'm doing here. So the trauma will be hiding a blind spot. So looking for the traumas is a really good way to find your blind spots, because the trauma was done for a reason. It's not that these beings love traumatizing people. Like they kind of do, but still there's a payoff somewhere. And payoff is it's done to hide a blind spot. So looking for logic traps and things that don't make sense in your behavior, looking specifically for traumas to deal with them, you're not healing the trauma because you need to heal the trauma. It's nice to have the trauma healed, just like it's nice to sit on the beach when the weather's beautiful and have a cool drink and go for a swim. It's not necessary to heal the trauma, but the trauma's blocking or covering something, and it'll be the blind spot that you're looking for.
Is there value in working with a partner on finding those blind spots, or are we just asking for trouble doing that, or are we avoiding something?
Both. You are asking for trouble, but not in a bad way. And I'll take this a step further, like the tantric, and tantra doesn't mean sex. Tantra just means outside of yourself. So washing the dishes is tantra, right? But the tantric sexual practices are described as the fastest and most dangerous way to get to where you're trying to get to realize what's actually going on here. And so I would say any partner work is faster than doing it on your own, but also more dangerous, because you're not going to trip off the tripwires and the triggers that are hidden in you. You're going to go fairly carefully. You're probably not going to blindside yourself, but someone else will blindside you, not deliberately, or maybe, but and you'll blindside them. So it's about being able to do that work, but not take it personally, or actually stop and say, why am I taking this personally? Because as soon as you get your back up and you kind of push away, and you're lost. So it's easier to do it on your own, but it's the slow road. Like if you want to speed it up, find a partner and start doing that kind of work with a partner. Get in underneath each other's skin and really start digging in the shadows, because that is where the rubber meets the road. It's hard work, but if you can stick it, it's the fast track compared to doing it on your own, because they're gonna drive way faster with you than you would want to, but we can take it.
That's marriage, isn't it?
That's a marriage. That's absolutely a marriage.
All right, let's see what we got here. Clones.
Yeah, totally. So yes, I'm just going to say yes to physical actual clones walking around, yes to energetic clones walking around, yes to the whole thing. Anything you can imagine around clones, yes. I'm just going to say yes. There's so many other places.
Do you think?
So from a military point of view, I think they call it stolen valor. Like if this, so this is just a theory, but I don't mind it. If this thing was not actually set up as a prison, and so there's this intrinsic, when you come in here, there's kind of this video game sense of there's this stuff allotted to you when you come in, right? You come in with everything you're going to get. And the birth certificate thing points to this, not saying this is the truth, but the birth certificate thing points in that direction of like when you're born, they see your parents, who you are, they see who you are, they take an energetic snapshot of you, what country you live in, and they allot a certain amount of money, like $500 million, $2 billion, whatever it is. That's what you'll generate over your lifetime. And then that's what runs the monetary system. So the birth certificate goes into wherever it goes, and they're like, oh, we've had another one born. He's got these sort of parents. He lives in this country. He's probably going to have this sort of education. And so we can generate another $2 billion, because over his lifetime, that's what will happen around him, is around $2 billion worth of wealth in the 70, 80, 90, 120 years, whatever, that he's going to be here. And that's the actual, so we are the actual currency. of the monetary system. So if you have a look at that point of view, it's like, so I've got, like, just from me coming in here, because of the way this system's calibrated, because these parasites didn't build this thing, right? They've taken it over from the inside out and they're using it like a farm or a prison. We've got this amnesia thing going on. They probably didn't even initiate that. They're just using it to their advantage because they're not very creative, these things. They just tweak and that's how they operate. So when I come in, I've got this stuff sitting for me somewhere waiting for me to access it. These spiritual gifts, these energetic gifts, this bank account, this, like, all of this stuff, right? But I don't know who I am. I don't know what's going on. And so what if you then inserted a clone or two that were running almost the same energetic signature as me? Or like the doppelganger thing, right? There are people that look like you. How many physical templates are there in here? Like, it's pretty slim. There's not, I've done some figures on it and it's in the hundreds or the thousands, not much. I'm not talking tens of thousands. The template is pretty small for what we're playing with. So if I could bring someone in who is running 99.95% your energetic signature, then we can just deliver all the goodies to that rather than you. And the system doesn't know, right? It's working on a couple of percent error rate, because look at nature. Everything's got it. This error rate is built into everything. So if they know what's going on and they kind of get pushed into the situation, suddenly Taylor Swift got all your money, right? Because these people who are out in front with the power and the money, and they're not real people. They're puppets. They're hollow. There's nothing in there. So how come, is it just that the system, like, what is that? Is it part of the pantomime? And I'm like, maybe, but there's this other thing going on of, like, they can steal your energetic signature to enough of a degree, then they can log into your bank account and take your money out, because biometrically and energetically, the system thinks that they're you. And you look around and you'll be able to find someone somewhere in the world who looks like you, maybe even talks a bit like you, acts around like, and they're powerful, rich, or famous. And you're not them. It's like, whose stuff are they playing with? Your stuff? Like, so that's definitely one stream of this clone thing. Like, because if you needed to produce NPCs to populate the game, I mean, you'd have to be able to clone people. You have to be able to build, like, we talk about cloning like it's this weird thing, but all the fruit trees are cloned. There's root stock, and then we cut a branch off that apple tree. We cut 50 branches off that apple tree and we jam it into all this root stock. So that's the same apple tree. So we clone plants all the time, especially for our food. Like, we're eating cloned food, natural, organic, biodynamic, fresh as a daisy, picked from the tree, cloned food. So if you can clone a plant, you telling me we can't clone a person or an animal? And if we're cloning plants for consumption, consumption's another weird thing in here. If we're cloning plants for consumption, then, whoa, so we're not cloning animals or humans for consumption?
Good point. Wow. Okay. That's a heavy one. Controlled opposition.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just, we just lay that out there like that. That's just a yes. And that's how you distract people who are passionate, or passionate's a good word, who are really invested in what they're doing. You let things get started, you let groups get going, and then you just get in and you take over the group. And so you run both.
Feels like there's a lot in the spiritual community, like
in all the communities that energetically matter. So and I had this conversation with someone about groups. I said, this is why I don't do groups. This is why I don't like groups. Like, I like groups, but like, as soon as you put a framework in place, and that's a group, right? As soon as you're not just free flowing, 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, even 10-on-1, but letting it free flow, you've got no plan, you've got no agenda, you're just rolling and seeing what happens. As soon as you make a framework, the system's got you, because the algorithm works with frameworks. So you build a group, any sort of group, you build a structure. That's the very structure that's going to pull your group apart from the inside out, with controlled opposition, with whatever you want to do. It's the structure, the framework, because that's the language that this system talks in, structure and framework. So once you, like, men being equal to women, as in, like, we all do our different stuff, but like we're all same, like level footing. Like you're very strong because you've got 15% more power in your muscle per weight. You're very agile, like whatever we want to do. Like it's not equal as in like this, but you know what I mean? Like equal standing, equal footing with stuff. That's fantastic. As soon as you have feminism, you have a structure, you have a framework, you have a narrative, you have infiltration, job done. It's just another tool of the system. So if you don't want to get controlled opposition, if you don't want to be a tool to the system, you really need to not be involved with structures and frameworks as much as possible. And I would include in that like websites and automatic booking and payment systems. And like it goes right down to the most minute detail. Anywhere where you're inviting structure and framework that's not flexible into your life, you're giving the system leverage to work against you.
Do you think some of these people that have come from, I'm just going to throw out like a Russell Brand.
Yep.
Do you think he's like a controlled up Tucker Carlson, people like that?
I'm just going to say yes to all of that, because you need to imagine, unless you know this person personally and grew up alongside them and ate dinner with their family, and you know that they're an NPC, maybe you know they're like a real person with a spirit and a soul, and like however we want to categorize that. Unless you know this person, or you've like really psychically, spiritually dived in deeply, like more deeply than you would be able to unless you've asked permission, kind of thing, you've got to assume that they're an Agent Smith because you don't know. So some people would say it's a terribly cynical way of viewing stuff around us. But like only if you take it personally. I don't take it personally. I'm just like, I don't know. And so I'm going to assume that you're an agent. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person. That doesn't mean you even know what's going on. I'm just assuming that something else is operating through you or has the potential to operate through you. So I'm going to keep my eye on you. And everyone should keep their eye on me. Like, this cuts both ways. Do not assume that you know someone because you grew up with them on television. Like, you don't know who they are. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And just because they're doing something you like, that's maybe even more reason to go, okay, but like, why is Russell Brand doing what he's doing? Why is Tucker Carlson, like they've got these backstories and they fit. So I'm not throwing them under the bus, but could they be? Of course they could be. Could Julian Assange be? Of course, like he's the perfect candidate for it, right? So if Julian Assange is actually an asset that the bad guys like, and there's no bad guys really, it's just the control system that wants to stay in control of us, keeping us giving our power away to it, like that, the algorithm. If Julian Assange is an asset of the algorithm of control, then I'm happy to let that one play out a little bit, because to activate him and bring him into play, they've got to throw a whole heap of other assets under the bus. And so I'm going to wait until the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bushes, the Trumps, wait until all of them get thrown under the bus and then go, oh, and by the way, him too. Like, because from an operational point of view, you could bring in an Assange and you could make it look like you're doing a really good thing, and you could clean out all the dead wood of the old system and introduce a brand new system, and everyone would love it because it's not the old system, it's the new one. It's the French Revolution. It's fantastic.
Wow.
Like
That
10 years
that's
up, 10 years,
interesting.
yeah, 10 years after the French Revolution, like even in the history books, which are all bullshit, 10 years after, because we don't know we don't even know what the American Revolution was, let alone the French Revolution. 10 years after the French Revolution, do you think the average person on a farm 50 k's from Paris was living any differently to how they were before? In fact, when you look at the laws and the things that were being leveraged and brought in 5 years before the French Revolution, I would suggest they were worse off 50 years after the French Revolution, not better. But that's just a little bit of alternate history. So, like, these big movements that have their own momentum and their own structure and their own, it's like, did you start that movement? Like, you got to look at that and go, what's going on here?
Question everything, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Even yourself and your own motives.
Probably the most. Yeah.
Mm.
How do we take back our power?
Yeah. Realize that you've given it away in the first place. First of all, you're not going to stop being an alcoholic unless you microdose on mushrooms. No, sorry, I didn't say that. You're not going to stop being an alcoholic unless you first admit that you are an alcoholic, that you have an issue with alcohol, whatever that reason is. Something's deficient in your bloodstream and you can't handle it, or whatever, you're escaping something. Like, you're not going to deal with the problem until you admit that it's happened. So first of all, let's not assume you have given your power away, because that's really front loading you and telling the story. Let's have a look at your life, and you ask the question, have I given my power away anywhere, in a big or a small way, for the greater good, for whatever, like anywhere at all? Yes or no? Find a yes. If there is a yes there, and we're not suggesting that there will be, see why you did it, see how you did it, study the mechanisms of how it worked, who was involved, and then claim your power back, or just look at it and go, it's like a study, like you're bird watching, right? That's an interesting blue-billed warbler. Check that out. Okay. Is there anywhere else I gave my power away? Big or small, for the greater good, whatever. Find the second one. How does it line up against the first one? What are the similarities? What are the differences? Find the third one, find the fourth one, and then realize that, like, you give your power away, it's to some degree daily, here and there. You don't have to. We are very powerful, so it's like no harm, no foul a lot of the time. But it's just, like I always say, you're in a corner and you're facing the wall. Like, you're not going to get back to the center of the room in one jump. It's a really big room. Like, someone walked you, or you walked yourself step by step into the corner, into the addiction, into the marriage that's terrible, like whatever it is, right? The only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. You need to realize that you're facing the wall. Ask the question, do I want to face the wall? No, I want to see what's going on in the middle of the room. So turn around, check out the scene. What's happening in the room? Are you happy standing in the corner? If you're not happy standing in the corner, the only way to get out of the corner is one step at a time.
Perfect. All right. We might get through these. Who controls Earth and why?
There's so many layers to that I'm just going to go right to the behind, like right behind. And I'm going to say the algorithm, capital T, capital A, like AI, the algorithm controls this realm that we're in, not the dream, not the astral, not the God realm, none of that stuff. Like, this dream space that we're in here, the algorithm controls this one. And the parasites, we don't even want to give them capital letters because they don't deserve it, but there are parasitic entities that know how to work the algorithm to their benefit. And we're operating on some weird amnesia in here. So we kind of see it, but we don't see it at the same time. And just a little aside to that is we look around ourselves and we go, well, I kind of see it, but no one else in the world's ever seen it the way and I've seen it this way ever since I was a child, but no one around me. What if none of them are actually real souled and spirited people? What if they're all non-player characters put here to convince you that you're crazy? They're just gaslighting you into submission.
Mm.
Whether that's real or not, what if? It's not like, well, it can't be that way because look at the way everyone else is behaving. Like, let's just assume they're not real. And this is the Truman Show. What then? Like, so there are lots of layers of nefarious beings and galactics and aliens and underground people, and there's no real space. And this one in here, it's an algorithm controls this space. And the parasites know how to use the algorithm against us. That's it. So it's not even control. It's like a boulder rolling down a hill and something's just giving it a little nudge every now and then to one side and the other. It's not actual control to the way I look at things, which is why some people seem to be able to get a grasp of what's going on and have amazing amounts of control over their own personal life and start living these really comfortable lives or really rich lives or just really enriching lives, or they actually do quite well in here, even if they're getting a whole lot of static. Like they work out some of the rules of the algorithm and they dance the dance and they get it to work. And yeah, the parasites try to trip them over here and there or try to co-opt them and turn them into controlled opposition, because these people are probably still flying blind for the most part. That's where probably a lot of controlled opposition comes from. People don't know that they're being used as controlled opposition because they can't see the whole story. But some big kind of nefarious one being overlord sitting over the top going, oh. No, not from what I can see. It's an algorithm. It's an autopilot. This thing is running on autopilot. And that's why all of these groups and entities and things, they all look at astrology. Like, what do they say? Millionaires don't believe in astrology, but billionaires do. Like, that's where we're at. They're looking at timing. They're looking at history. They're looking at patterns. They're looking at astrology because this whole thing is a clock. And there are times you can do anything anytime, but there are these moments where it's really easy to get stuff done. And so the parasites study that and they make sure we don't pay any attention to that at all. That's just nonsense. That's just fantasy. Don't look at that.
Wow. Interesting. Now I need to learn astrology. Your biggest realization since 2020?
Since 2020, initially I would say how asleep people are and how hard it is to convince someone of something that they don't want to hear. But then that leads into, are they even a being that you can wake up? Or are they a non-playing character? Do they have the potential to become a being that can wake up, but at this point in time, they're not? And that doesn't, like, anyone who's played a lot of video games, like, yeah, you can play the game, these interactive games. It's kind of Dungeons and Dragons, choose your own adventure thing. You can play an interactive game where you treat the NPCs like shit. That's fine. Like, that's a way of doing it. But usually, like, the keys and the codes and the hidden rooms and the secret stashes, the NPCs have got all the data on that, not you. Like, it's hidden in the algorithm in the NPCs. So if you can talk politely to them or, manipulate them and be nasty to them or beat it out of them or like whatever way you choose to play the game, the NPCs have got the data that helps you play the game more effectively. So, like, don't just go, oh, NPC, like, throw them under the bus, like they're not even real. Well, That's a way of looking at it, but it's pretty narrow and short-sighted way of looking at it. I don't operate like that at all. I don't NPC is not a dirty word to me. Like I'm not treating them any differently to anyone or anything else in here. I'm just knowing what I'm dealing with. So if you were trying to wake someone up in 2020 or 2021 or what, like, first of all, you've got to ask yourself, is this a being that can even be woken up? Because if not, like, you're screaming into the wind.
All right. Plant medicine and psychedelics.
Plants, I heard, this is not my description. I heard this described to me actually by two different people. I can't even remember who they are. Sorry, I can't reference them. But the way they described it was the plant is absolutely sure and aware of who it is, and you are not at all aware of who you are or sure of it. So when you put that particular plant into your body, instead of it getting taken on your trip, you get taken on its trip. And it knows what's going on. It sees the world like a mushroom trip is different to a DMT trip. And then DMT is like, are you taking acacia root? Are you taking toad skin? Are you using ayahuasca brew? Like there's different, are you just doing breath work and activating your internal endogenous DMT in your own body? There are all these different flavors of what we're doing. Tobacco, alcohol. I mean, all food is a drug from that point of view. It's just a drug we're very adapted to, most of them. Like plants are plants, right? So they're taking you to see the world from their point of view is what I feel is going on. And that can play out any number of different ways for you. But still, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're using the plant or you're asking the plant, because some people are like they're grabbing the plant and enslaving it and torturing it to kick the door open to find out what's going on. And other people are very respectfully going and asking the plant if it can take them on a journey and show it. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, just like dealing with NPCs. But you're using the plant to get you to see something or experience something that you don't think or you're absolutely sure you can't do on your own at this point, right? And so it's like there's a brick wall in front of you and you've asked the plant to give you a boost to look over the wall. And you're like, you peer over the wall and you're like, whoa, this is what's actually going on in here? Like, wow. But then at some stage, the plant says, I can't hold you up there forever. It's time to come down. And what happens when you come down? You're still on your side of the brick wall. None of those plants will knock the brick wall down for you. None of them. They won't. They might tell you how to get around it. Like they might have messages for you if you can interpret it. But they're kind of just showing you not their potential, your potential. So from that point of view, yes, fantastic. But just know that when you get that boost up, you're putting your head over the parapet and a sniper might snap a shot or two at you, right? So this is the whole, I've gone to the jungle, I'm doing ayahuasca, I'm cleaning and purging and I'm really open and then I came home with all these demons or all these parasites or I bent out of shape or that guy did mushrooms and he just did it the wrong way and now he's got all these entities on him. Or yeah, you put your head above the parapet, something's going to take a shot at you. Like we're in a very opportunistic system here. That's kind of how things roll. So just know that you're in a war zone and you're about to put your head above the parapet and act accordingly. So yeah, if you go down to the jungle, who's the guy or the girl mixing the brew? Where did they get it from? Did they do it in the correct way or are they just saying they did? Is this just like ecotourism or are they really holding the space? Or have they got a deal going with parasitic spirits and they're just offering you up like lambs to the slaughter and they don't give a shit because you're from another country? They don't care. Like all of this stuff is in play. So you've got to know that you're stepping into, you're about to be taken into a space. You don't know how to get there and you don't know how to get back. Because if you did, you wouldn't be asking the mushroom or the drink or the frog or what, you wouldn't be asking them for help. Alcohol's another one, right? That's got a good and a bad reputation. If you knew how to do it, you wouldn't be asking for help. So when you do it, you put yourself in a potentially vulnerable situation because you don't know how you're going to get there. You don't know how you're going to get back. And so you don't know how to behave in that space. So yeah, you might pick up hitchhikers. It might bring up all this stuff. It might, like, that's just part of it. And it's not, we're still pretty powerful. Like you'll work it out. If you want to work it out, even if you do it that way, you'll work it out. But it's not like it's evil, and it's not like it's super beneficial and wonderful, and it's not like anything's happening to you that you couldn't do on your own. But for some reason, you can't get there on your own, so you're asking for help. But asking for help comes with additions. Like anytime you ask anyone or anything for help, there's going to be these little amendments to, yeah, well, but it's going to cost you this, or it's going to cost you that. And as long as you're aware of that, no problem. But the caveat to that is you can do that yourself. You don't need the drugs, the plants, it's not necessary, but there's nothing wrong with it. Just be aware, energetically aware of what you're about to do, all levels of what you're about to do, where you're going to go and who's taking you and what they might have going on.
And check the astrology before you go.
Check the astrology. What's the space weather like? Where's the moon? Like that's a big one for a start, right? Where's the moon? What's the moon doing? That's number one. What's the sun doing? Are you going in the day? Are you going at night? What time of night? What time of day? What location on the map are you? And then you could go deeper into the astrology, like who harvested the mushroom? Who dried the mushroom? What were they thinking of when they picked it? What music were they listening to? What was going on in the house where they dried it? Mm-hmm. All of that stuff matters. All of it matters. Yeah. This is why they talk about magicians making their own magical implements, because then if something goes wrong, it's kind of a metaphor, but it's true. Then you know exactly what's going. You didn't just buy a wand off Etsy, because when you buy a wand, you buy all the trouble from the person who made the wand. That comes with it. That's part of the package. So when you get the mushroom or you get the tea or you get the whatever you're getting, you get the alcohol, who is involved in the distilling? What country did the grain come from? Well, I like Irish whiskey. Well, I like Scottish whiskey. Well, I like, vodka from, all the grain came from the Ukraine, all of it, right? So where did the grain come from? Where did the sugar come from? How was it harvested? That stuff matters. And with our day-to-day food and drink, it matters, but not to a great extent. And that just shows you how powerful we are, that people can live on McDonald's, right? You could eat cardboard and still put on weight and kind of feel okay for a while. With psychedelic stuff, it matters a lot more because it's just much more powerful. It's much more amplified.
Can you go a little bit longer, or do you need to go?
No, I can go longer.
Okay, because we probably have 5 or 6 left, so we might.
Because this is fun. I'm loving this.
I'm so glad. Mandela effect. What is its purpose?
I don't know that you would even word it that way. Does it have a purpose? That's kind of like saying, what's the palm tree's purpose? Mandela effect is just there. It's probably always been a thing. I'm going to go into some wild high-octane speculation here. That the system or the algorithm that, say, you and I grew up in, because that's all we can talk on, is when we were children and young adults. And it was much more stable. And so you didn't notice the Mandela effects. But then whatever's gone on in the last 15 or 20 years, the system and the algorithm, it's very unstable. It's like a glitchy computer. There's a lot of glitches, and stability, the firmware updates didn't come through or they didn't work. Stability is a real issue. And so Mandela effects start to be noticed in a real way, because stuff is getting changed on the back end retrospectively all the time in here. no one notices because no one notices, right? But and when you do notice, that becomes a Mandela effect. You're like, I don't remember it being that way. Well, I would suggest that when you do a spirit journey or a soul retrieval, or like you go back in time and you heal this version of yourself, you change the story slightly, you tweak it, and it has a visceral effect on you, like a real, no one can deny, like the reality of it or the whatever, the mumbo jumbo-ness of it, the woo, like who cares? You do the journey, you go, you get guided, you go on your own, you change the past, you come back, and your body and your energetic signature and your emotions behave as if the past changed. The angel stepped in and offered you healing as a child, except you were the angel, right? And then you can think back and go, I remember an experience when I was 5, and this beautiful being of light stepped in and offered me a hug and just said it's going to be okay. And I just thought she was an angel. Did you have that memory before you did the healing session on the 5-year-old you? Probably not, because it didn't happen, right? But then you did the healing session and suddenly you're the angel of light that came in and hugged you and said it was going to be all right. And that's this that you drew pictures of her for 2 years afterwards, and you have that memory, you remember it all of a sudden. That's your own personal little Mandela effect. You glitched the system to your benefit. So that stuff's going on all the time. And a Mandela effect is just that we notice the changes. We can remember both sides of it, and that's a glitch. So I would say that the processing system, or the power that fuels the processing system, or however you want to put that, is running out of juice. And it can't work as effectively as it can anymore. And so it is getting very glitchy. And Mandela effects are some kind of seen proof to ourselves that, yeah, this system's starting to glitch out a bit. It's not as seamless as it used to be.
Some people have a theory that perhaps the powers that be, whoever the puppeteers are wanting to see how far they can take things to change them before we'll call them out. I don't know.
You could make that argument. You could totally make that argument. That's maybe giving them more nuance and autonomy and authority than they perhaps have, but you could totally make that argument. Absolutely. Yeah. And so if that was your argument or your speculation, then call it out right now. Like as loud as you can. Like don't get on social media and don't find a cause, don't build a group and a structure around calling it out, because that's not the way to do it. But just like verbally, anytime you see it, call it out. If that's what you feel is going on, then the way to get this to ratchet to the next level or get closer to you getting out, or the Truman Show characters come out and say, oh yeah, you got us, like whatever it's going to be. If that's waiting for how bad's it going to get before you call it out, and you look around yourself and go, well, no one else is calling it out. Yeah, but if they're part of the system, they're not going to call it out. So if you notice it, just call it verbally into your space. Just go, oh, I see you. I see that. Like, don't think you're going to pull that one past me. Like, I can see what you're doing. Call it and then see what happens.
Love it, love it, love it. Okay. Movies, predictive programming. Are they predictive programming, do you feel?
Yes, absolutely. And it doesn't even need to be nefarious, because where does fiction even come from? There's way more truth in fiction than in autobiographies and factual and history. And there's way more reality about how this thing works, and even how the other layers in here work, and like the whole construct, the whole thing, dream space and inside and outside. There's way more truth about that in fiction, and movies will count as that, but just books, because it's in people, like it's living in people, and it's getting transmitted into people, and it's just there. And it's like super soldier secret space program stuff, like it's in there, and they have to start a YouTube channel and start talking about it. Back in the day when there was no YouTube channel, they'd start writing fiction. They become an English teacher, and they teach, and they start writing books about that sort of stuff because they had to get it out. Like, it's in them and it has to come out. And so if there's a truth and a reality about your experience and what's going on around you and that's in you that has to come out, so you write some crazy fantasy or sci-fi fiction and you turn it into a movie. Now, if there's also like programs running in you to fail safe all that stuff, so you don't wake up properly and you don't realize that you're a character in that story, that like, here comes Star Wars, but you don't realize it's real and you're one of the characters and like all of that stuff, then the programming is going to come through in the story as well. And that's going to look like, to someone who's awake and aware, that's going to look like nefarious predictive programming. And it is, but it's just like latent. It's just coming through from the author because it's part of the story for them. And then the layer that I'll add to that is, with a movie, of course, then you run it past executives, and then you run it past production teams, and they've definitely got people in there going, we need to insert that ad in there. We need to insert this bit of social commentary in here. We're like, they're absolutely predictive programming in movies all the time. Mm-hmm. Sometimes just monetarily. The government's paying them to do it. Coca-Cola is paying them to do it. Like, they absolutely use movies and television as a vehicle to push that stuff into people, and advertising. So on many different levels, there's lots of predictive programming going on. And that doesn't mean don't look at movies or read stories or look at advertising, or that just means don't go above your pay grade. Like, if you can't really see it, then work on it. Train yourself to be able to see it. If you want to go looking for it, because it's there, but I mean, who wants to sit through 2.5 hours of a Marvel movie just like at you with all of that stuff to try and pull out the predictive programming? And it's like, do I really need to do that? Like, if I'm not enjoying it, if it's not escapism, and I can't tell what the programming is, you don't know what's getting inserted into you. So maybe just don't do it. But if you know how to wade through a muddy paddock without picking up too many leeches, why not? Have a go. See what you can see. Like, it's a bit of fun to see what you can see when you can like watch it, not as an audience member, but in the third person. Like, what have they inserted in here? Because there's so much truth. I was like, something pointed me in the direction of the Wheel of Time books. I know they've made a TV series about it lately, but you know, they're books from the early 1990s. And so I've read, listened to, because audiobook's my thing. I much better orally than reading, and I have no time to read a book, but I can listen to a book. I'm into the third book now. There is so much, and there's like 10 or 12 books, but there's just so much in the world building of that world that he built for that story, that tells you not just how the mechanics work in here, but how the mechanics work in the whole thing. Like dimension, levels, constructs, dream, the whole thing is kind of laid out. And there's also predictive programming in there that I've spotted, gone back to, listened to again, and gone, wow. So you get like the truth, you get it all laid out, and then there's the twist at the end to take your power away and give the power to something else. I mean, Robert Jordan, who wrote the book, he's not a CIA asset. He's probably not a parasite. He's probably not any of that. He just had this thing in him that he was trying to get out, but the programming came out with it. And so it's like training yourself to get really good to see the difference between the truth and the programming. And the better you get at that, the better you are at breaking codes.
Wow. That's a good one. Cern.
So many theories about CERN. And the easiest way for me to say it is that I think CERN is an inorganic portal, an unnatural portal. So it's built. So we are portals. We have portals. I don't know how you even want to word that. you probably word it either way. But our portals just are, or they're grown. Like they're natural's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. Like they're not. Our portals aren't mechanical. They're kind of they've got this. They don't use a lot of energy. They don't. They're kind of easy to control. Like we are these portals. We have these portals. Cern and all the other colliders that are around the place, like they look to me like inorganic portals. They look like someone's tried to build a Stargate, basically, because we are Stargates as far as I'm concerned. And so that one in the movie, that's like an inorganic Stargate. It's a built portal rather than a grown portal with everything that comes with a grown portal. Like, so that's why Cern takes a lot of power. That's why Cern has to be so big. That's why all of that stuff, like for what it is and what it does and what it should be, just looks to me like a portal. And there could be many, many other layers of what's going on there, but that's my take.
I would agree with that. I'm gonna dump these out. There's 4 left. So
Cool.
I'm gonna let you either pick your favorite or touch upon all 4 quickly.
Yeah. Good.
We have the Great Reset, the 1% Agenda, Christ, and the Sun.
Okay, so we've sort of played with all of that. So I would say the sun is a portal, like just 100% a portal, and probably the planets are as well. Whatever we're calling planets, whatever we think they are, they're just portals.
Do you feel the sun has changed in the past few months?
And I feel like what we're visually looking and months, it's changed in the last few weeks. It keeps just changing and oscillating. It's not, the sun was pretty static when we grew up, but it hasn't been static or stable for at least 15 years, I don't think, maybe 20. And so what the sun that we are looking at most of the time probably isn't a portal. It's probably some sort of built thing, some manufactured thing. Whereas I would suggest that the actual sun that we grew up with, and I'm not saying it's good or bad or whatever, because I mean, we are still in a hologram, right? But that thing, that is an actual portal, and it was grown. So it's like natural, whatever that means, rather than built. It's not constructed. It constructed itself. It's self-constructing. And again, then you get the nanobot thing, is like this in-between thing of like, well, that's self-constructing. And you're like, yeah, but the nanobot had to be constructed before it could become self-constructing. So it's like it's a hack. It's cheap. So there's the sun. What else did we have?
The Great Reset, the 1% Agenda, and Christ.
All right, the 1% Agenda. A lot of the stuff we've touched on that. Like it's like it only takes one sheepdog to control 2,000 sheep. Like it's just, when you're using trauma training, that's how you control things. Is, the 1% Agenda, slavery, farming. It's all the same thing. So that's not this nefarious plan, or that's just how you do things when that's what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to do. You don't want 50 controllers controlling something when one will do if you use a certain technique. So it's only a 1% controlling us because they've got the correct technique for doing it. But the idea that it's there is like, of course it's there. Like it's as plain as the nose on your face that it's there. The Great Reset, there has been more than one. There have been many different, large and small. Are we trying to come into one now? Oh, most certainly the algorithm has been like getting tweaked and retro tweaked and bounced backwards and forwards to try and get some sort of a reset happening in this period that we've been in recently, like decades, say, not even. It's just not working for them. Boo-hoo, bad luck. We're not doing it that way this time. As to how many other resets, or like, is Jason Archaic's correct? And it's every 300 years or whatever he says. I know someone will have the exact figure. Look, maybe, but maybe the biblical flood was the mud flood 400 years ago. Like, do you actually know? there's all this history and all these books and all this, and like they've been radiocarbon dated, and the experts tell you how old it is. Yeah, the experts also tell you dinosaurs are true, but they don't have any bones to show you. They've just got casts of bones. So it's like, this is what the bone looks like. Honestly, where's the actual bone so I can see the actual bone? Oh, it's downstairs underneath. We don't bring them out for the public to see. But I've got a friend, and he was married to a paleontologist, and it's always third hand. It's like what's happening in Gaza, it's like what's happening in Ukraine. It's always third hand. Who's actually there, who's been there and seen it and been in an actual firefight and a skirmish and knows exactly what's going on rather than what you're being told? Because otherwise, what are you trusting? Like, you don't. So I can't trust how old these documents are. 10,000 years, 20,000 years, 250,000 years, yeah, or maybe 250 years, right? So how many resets? Maybe only one. Maybe all these stories are just the same reset, and we're imagining it's all at different time depths, but it's not. We can't really. I mean, it's a good question to ask, to just assume that what we presented is true, which is, what a lot of these researchers do. It's like the 2020 thing of the arguments of why you would need medical interventions and why you would need to behave in a certain way. And I'm watching my language very closely around that. It's like, if your premise of what went on in 2020 was correct, then I can see why you would think that way. But that's a theory and you have nothing to back it up. So you're not going to get me to change behavior or act in a certain way or do certain things to myself on a theory. You're going to have to do a bit better than that. And a lot of history is a theory. There's not a lot of primary document out there. So yes, there was a reset. Yes, there was at least a big event. Yes, it's on a clock. Everything in here is on a clock. This whole thing is a clock. How many? I don't know. Who knows? Were they trying? Are they still trying? Yeah, they are still trying, because everything's on a clock, including them. So like they're predictable in that way. It's a bit like talking about NPCs, right? You're not saying they're bad, you're not saying they're good. You're just treating them the way you'd like to be treated, and you know what they are, and you're not going to ask anything of them that they can't be, that they can't do, because why would you do that? Why would you ask a ballerina to try and power lift a 300-pound weight? Why would you ask a power lifter to try and do a plie or a ballerina move? Like, you're just going to drive yourself mad doing that. The Christ thing, that's a can of worms. There's so much programming. There's so much like, do I even want to go there? All I can say is, like, I don't even know where to go with that, because there are so many branches, and I'm not even talking about like an actual man. Yeah, there's one branch, and then the prophecy, there's another branch. What does that word even mean in Greek? What does it even mean in Old Hebrew? What does it even mean in Aramaic? Like, we don't even know what we're talking about. We think we know what that word Christ means. Well, when you translate it back from Greek, it means light, and it's the aura around them, and it's the glow that you get when you do urine therapy. No, it's the glow that you get when you do meditation in a certain way and you become an ascended being. No, it's the glow you get when you're a reptilian overlord, because you've got the right sort of blood and DNA. We do not know what we're talking about. And most people who go to see, like in dream, in astral, in mushroom trip would be interesting, right? Because of like the church and the wafers and the just put that out there. But like, most people who go to see this being, the trick with doing that is the being that you're going to be presented with is the being you expect to see, or the being that's the diametric opposite of what you expect to see. So we get those people saying, Jesus and the devil are the same thing, like those pictures where it's cut down the middle and it's like they're two sides of the same coin. It's all that stuff. So like, what are we even talking about when we say Christ? We've got to get that straight first before we even dive in, because there is so much deception so many cul-de-sacs, so many blind alleys that you can go down to try and work out what is that energy, what is that impetus, what is that title, what are we even talking about? And I could talk in 15 different directions at once off the word Christ, and none of them would connect to each other. So it's like there's so much distortion and distraction around, and everyone's got their own flavor. People are yelling at the screen right now, like, Hamish, it's this. Hamish, it's that. Talk about this one. And I can assure you, every single person yelling at the screen is yelling something different to each other. So it's like, what does that word mean for you? Why? Where are your traumas around that? Where are your blind spots around that? And then, like, if you were going to go and try and find out, like, what is that word? What is that energy actually, with no front loading, no traumas, you're going to have to do, especially if you've been brought up in a Christian country or a nominally, well, any sort of Abrahamic religion country, right? People in India or China might have a front runner on this. They might be actually much cleaner and better at finding this than us. Although Christ and Krishna are very interchangeable words. I'll just float that out there. So you've got to try and clear all your baggage around it first. And there's a lot of baggage if you've grown up in a country that is, or a family that is nominally one of the three Abrahamic religions, which most of the audience will be. So get that all to the point where you're not going to take any of that personally, and then go and see what you get presented with and go from there, because there's just so much going on with that. And I mean, and that is a question in and of itself. So why is there so much? Why are there so many different directions I could take that in? Why are there so many distortions? Why are there so many different narratives around that? So it's got to be important. You would expect the whole thing could be a red herring. Like, as soon as I said it's got to be important, it's like, the whole thing could be not important. And it's just got you thrashing in different directions, looking for this answer that means nothing.
And distracted.
And totally distracted. Like, is it going to improve your life? Is it going to improve the life of the people around you? Is it going to improve your situation of where you are and where you're trying to get and what you're trying to work out? If the answer is no, forget it. Put it on the back burner. It's probably not important.
Hamish, this was so much fun. I love this.
Yeah, with lots of fun. Thank you so much for inviting me and doing it this way. It's really
absolutely,
enjoyable.
Absolutely. I'm going to come up with a new list of things, so maybe in a few more months we can get together again and talk some more. But thank you so much for being here. And everybody, check out Hamish's YouTube, his Instagram. It's Harmonic Balancing. Is that correct?
Yeah, on Instagram. Yeah.
I'm going to put everything down below. So go check him out. He has some really great stuff. And thank you so much for being here.
Very welcome. Thank you, Linda.
Alrighty. Bye-bye, everybody.